So, part four. Let's get into it. Um, Now that we know what dialectical materialism is, let us take a closer look at some of the advantages of using diamat to study the political economy of Africa, and by extension, studying society as a whole. So, the first advantage is it gives up it gives us a deep understanding of the dynamic nature of society. As as I've mentioned earlier, unlike contemporary Western science that is more concerned with the order of things, Diamat is more focused on dynamism and change. For example, in Western political science, the major problem is the problem of political stability. Western political science is preoccupied with trying to categorize and define the state of political stability. The same thing can be seen in sociology, where so much effort goes into the problem of how social order is maintained. Western social science is conservative and tailored towards maintaining social, economic, or political order. So, because of this conservativeness, it is unfortunate to see that social science in Africa is enamored and looks towards using the methods of Western social science. It is unfortunate because the maintenance of social order that Western social science is concerned with is very different from the concerns of a society like Africa, where there is a need to develop quickly and should be more interested in changing the social order. There's a quote from Marx that I feel really describes this inadequate nature of Western social science. He says, the philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Moving on. In studying Africa, dialectical materialism is perfect because it frees us from adopting and using certain attitudes of Western social science. Some of these include the tendency to see agreement everywhere and to prefer agreement to conflict, a tendency to view contradiction and disequilibrium negatively. If you want to study and understand change in society, you have and you need to recognize that conflict and contradictions are the things that bring about change and progress. This is why when things start getting difficult in a place like in Nigeria right now, the electricians always say things like contradictions are sharpening, because when contradictions sharpen, change is likely to happen. Concrete actual change is likely to happen. So in this work, we see how the colonization of Africa was a result of the contradictions of capitalism, how the contradictions of colonial economy led to political independence but not economic independence, and how further contradictions are today determining the course of development in African societies. Second advantage of Diamat. Dialectical materialism allows us to see society in the context of development. Traditional social science, that's Western social science, often encourages us to look at social phenomena and occurrences as things that just happen to be there, fully formed without a natural history. But our method, Diamat, encourages us to look at social phenomena in the context of their development, looking at them as elements of a continuum or as moments in a process that's still unfolding. Social phenomena are things that have a beginning, they are things that are currently happening, and they are things that will pass away. By considering the development of social occurrences, we are able to get a better understanding. We not only understand how things come to be, what they are, but we can also make reasonably accurate predictions of what they might become. To understand this point of um, seeing society in context of development, to understand this point better, let us look at how traditional economists treat the problem of underdevelopment. Western economists and African economists that have been trained by the West or trained in Western economics tend to reduce the problem of underdevelopment to a combination of factors. And I'm sure we have heard these factors in both secondary school and university. We have heard these factors in school. Factors like lack of capital, insufficient saving, lack of technical knowledge, lack of entrepreneurial skills, and lack of diversification of the economy. So classical economics tell us that these are factors that causes underdevelopment. If you imply that it is these specific factors that cause underdevelopment, then the way to solve underdevelopment is to remove these factors. But it is easy to see that this way of dealing with the problem of underdevelopment is not promising. Why? First of all, this extension of underdevelopment is a tautology. This is because these factors that are called causes of underdevelopment are in fact symptoms of underdevelopment. This is part of the reason why the development strategy of classic economics has been a disaster in Africa. If you then look at underdevelopment in the context of development that Diamat suggests, you recognize that underdevelopment is not simply reducible to separate elements, but it is a complex thing made up of components that have an organic unity. You see that underdevelopment is deeply rooted in the social, economic, and political structures of Africa, and that underdevelopment cannot be overcome without a complete transformation of the entire socio-economic system of Africa. Third advantage. Okay, third advantage of dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism views and studies society comprehensively. It emphasizes the interrelatedness of society, particularly the economic, social, political, and religious structures. In doing this, Diamat provides explanations with more depth. The fact that conventional Western social science has specialized disciplines for studying different aspects of social life, there is political science for the political system, sociology for the social system, and economics for the economic system. This unfortunately encourages a fragmented and incomplete view of society. All these different disciplines then create the illusion that whatever aspect of social life that they are studying stands alone. Each of them approaches society as if there are no interrelations. I have previously spoken about how economics does this, especially in relation to politics and philosophy. This is shown in the fact that economics is currently called economics instead of what was originally called political economy. So yeah, moving on. Even worse than treating themselves as being alone from each other, when these disciplines of Western social science do research, their findings are obscure, in confusion, and in contradiction with each other. So you can't even say that their different perspectives can combine to form a coherent tool for studying society. On the other hand, dialectical materialism offers a better chance of a comprehensive view of society and provides coherent and cumulative knowledge about society. Fourth advantage, Diamat treats problems concretely rather than in abstracts. In much of the Western social science that African social science has adopted, there is a tendency to explain social phenomena in abstracts. For example, one explanation that Western social science uses to explain economic backwardness and underdevelopment is that those of us in developing countries lack achievement motivation. But this achievement motivation is very abstract and not precise at all. So in typical fashion, Western social science attempted to quantify this achievement motivation by coming up with sets of questions by which an attitude survey could be conducted and scored. These surveys were supposed to measure achievement motivation, but obviously didn't work because the survey questions were abstract and ambiguous themselves. This attempt to quantify something like achievement motivation gave the illusion of a scientific and empirical explanation. But of course, it didn't lead anywhere. It couldn't even have led anywhere because Western social science was looking at the problem wrongly. It was looking at the problem of underdevelopment in abstracts. It was explaining underdevelopment in terms of attitudes. The attitudes were treated as if they could be separate from actual historical circumstances. Okay, look at this. Is it by accident that one set of attitudes are prevalent in a particular society? If you say yes, that it is by accident, you can't explain these attitudes then. But if you say no, that it is not by accident, you then have to ask, what causes these attitudes to be prevalent? So, apart from revealing the inadequacy of using attitudes to explain underdevelopment, the question of what causes this attitude to be prevalent suggests that you need to go beyond attitudes and look at the material conditions that causes them. Things like attitudes, beliefs, motivation, and other forms of consciousness do not exist in a vacuum. They are not accidents. They are a reflection of the history of a people formed by concrete historical conditions. They cannot be understood or meaningfully discussed if they are dissociated from these historical conditions. These forms of consciousness evolve over a long period of time in the course of man's interaction with his human and physical environment, in the course of his interaction with his material world. This is why an explanation of underdevelopment in abstract terms like attitudes explains very little. So let me add that because Western social science exists to legitimize and give credence to Western capitalism, and because colonization was a product of this Western capitalism, Western social science tries to convince us not to look at the history and consequences of colonization when we try to understand why Africa is the way it is. You hear people often say things like, colonization ended a long time ago. You got independence, 50 years ago, you're still like this. Colonization was a massive part of our history, and it brought with it absolutely zero positives. And this cannot be ignored. If we are going to look at the attitudes and the society of a people who had a massive chunk of their history caused by something that brought zero positives, you cannot ignore that thing that brought zero positives. So let's go on. A final advantage of approaching problems concretely is that it exposes false assumptions and biases in explanations. The lack of achievement, motivation, explanation of underdevelopment is an example of this bias. When you put achievement, motivation in historical context of humanity, you find that achievement motivation just refers to the covetousness of capitalist societies. So all of these advantages are not all the advantages of diamat, but they just show the analytic possibilities that dialectical materialism presents to us. So next time I'll go into the concept that diamat uses. When we say economic conditions should be taken as the most important element in addressing society, how do we look at these economic conditions? So in the next video, I'll introduce the concepts to use at looking at economic conditions. Concepts like means of production, mode of production, relations of production. Thank you.